Hi and welcome to this video log with me, Wayne, from SwimCycleRunning.com. Well, this week it's a brand new year. We're into training, we're into targets, and I'm going to show you 5 tips guaranteed to help you qualify for this year's World Championships in Mexico. You heard it right, 5 tips guaranteed to help you to get to this year's World Championships in Mexico. I'm going to take a specific example, and we're going to take my son, who's just come up to the 25 to 29 year age category and wants to qualify in the sprint championships. Any race you want, you can do the same thing and just help yourself maximize your chance to qualify for the World Championships. We're going to use that example. Now, the first tip I'm going to give you is know your races. We're going to go to the computer and I'm going to show you what I mean.
Okay, so I've downloaded the 2016 British Triathlon Age Group Major Events Calendar. And in that, I've highlighted the ITU Sprint Distance Triathlon World Championship Qualifier. And you'll note that the first one is Eton Dorney on the 22nd of the 5th, the second is Strathclyde, 5th of the 6th, and the third is Llandudno on the 19th of the 6th. They all happen within a month, and they're all, interestingly, draft legal. That's a rule change this year that is hugely important in the sprint distance qualification. That's not true in the standard distance triathlon. So that's rather important for people who don't necessarily swim so well. Last year, there were 3 races, but the only one repeated is the Eton Sprint. And of course, last year that was not a drafting race. So we've got to bear that in mind when we look at all the other tips that we're going to give you.
Okay, so now we know the races, we want to know something about the people who did them last year. So we need to know our competition, we need to know the people who are likely to be there in those races trying to qualify for the World Championships. We'll go to the computer again and I'll show you what I mean.
Okay, so we're interested in 3 races, and you see the tag here says Eton, that one says St Neots, and that one says Nottingham. And what I've done to sort out, well, to make it sort easier and to save time, is I've actually sorted them into 25 to 29 category, and I've sorted them out to be male as well, so we've not got any confusing people in there. So what we're looking at here is the top 4 definitely qualify for the World Champs. So there's the top 4 there in that race. But the top 20 overall are likely to be taken to the World Championships or given places if they wish them to the World Championships, and that rolls down so long as you're within a reasonable percentage of the winner's time. Now the winner here is Edward Castro, and surprisingly enough, Edward Castro did all 3 races. He's there at the top again, and he's there at the top again. So he won all 3 qualification races last year, and he's obviously someone to watch out for if he's doing the qualification races again. But we can actually look all the way down to the 7th place on each one. So we can go all the way down to 7, and again all the way down 7, because the 7th place is likely to get a qualifying place so long as they're fast enough. And okay, so we now are getting a good idea of the competition we'll have to beat, or at least match, when we do the qualification races.
Okay, so we have the people and we have the races. Now we need to know the speeds I'm likely to have to go, or he's likely to have to go to. I'm not going to do these speeds. He's going to do these speeds. The speeds he's going to have to travel at or compete at to potentially win a place. And what we're talking about winning a place here for him is being in the top 4. That's what he wants to be. He wants to be in the top 4 positions in his age group and qualify as a matter of right. Yeah, so he wants to qualify by right, and he wants to do it as a top 4 place in one of those races. Let's have a look at how that might work.
Okay, so now we've got an idea of our competition. We actually want to know the speeds that we might have to race at to match that competition. And let me just unhide something here. I've got something here that will calculate speeds for me. You can do the same, you can do it easily yourself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in on the first line, the 4th and the 7th of each to see what I might have to do. Now, Edward here did 9:15 in this race. He had T1 in 1 minute exactly. He had a cycle time of 31:42 and T2 in 42 seconds, a run time of 19:05. And if you notice, that's given us speeds. It's given us 74 seconds per 100. It's given us 37 kilometers, 0.85 kilometers on the bike. And it's given us 15.72 on the run. Now I'm going to fill that in, and I'm going to fill it in for the other races so we can see on the 1st, the 4th and the 7th what speeds they're doing. Okay, I've done that, and I've hidden the ones in between 1, 4 and 7 because we're just looking at 1, 4 and 7 on all of them. Let's look at Edward first. He's swimming at 1:14. The others are swimming at 1:35 and 1:32. In terms of cycle speed, 37, 38, 36 kilometres an hour. And in terms of run speed, 15, 16 and 15 kilometres an hour. That seems just slightly slow. But everything else looks about right for this type of age group, what you'd expect from them. Now let's have a look at St Neots. We've gone up in swim speed, so the conditions might have been rougher. I don't know what the conditions are like in St Neots. I've not been there. But we've got 1:18s and 1:37s and 36s. In terms of cycle speed, we've actually gone down, so it may be a hilly course. And that might be the reason for that, but 32, 32, 31, they're very similar, so there's no great difference. But run speed, we're well up into the 18s and 19s. And to me, that does suggest that it may have been just slightly short. Okay, so now let's look at Nottingham. Now, Nottingham, we know, is a flat course again, and we're looking at 1:10, 1:28, 1:27. We're above 40 kilometres an hour here. Unless there was absolutely no wind, I don't see why we've jumped to suddenly over 40 kilometres an hour, unless they were drafting perhaps. But that suggests that that might have been slightly short. I wouldn't have thought that was what we need. I think we need between 37 and 40 though. So that's a good indication. And we're back down to the 16 kilometres an hour, around 17. Now I'd expect to need 17 kilometres an hour to 18 kilometres an hour to actually be in the top 4 in this age group. So we've now got a good idea of the speeds we need in order to actually qualify for the World Championships. Okay, so that's all well and good, but we can actually use more information from the British Triathlon site. They actually put a list of people who qualified for the World Championships from the 2015 season. And it's interesting to note that Edward Castro, who won all the races, Ross McGregor and Christopher Silva all had pre-qualified from the Edmonton World Championships the year before. So they'd pre-qualified, they didn't have to do any of the races, but the fact that they were in the races, they pre-qualified, remember, which means they must have podiumed previously. The fact that they pre-qualified means that if they were in the race, they were pretty fast, and that makes this 15% from the top pretty hard to get. So they made it more difficult for everyone else. But there are people missing from the mix. For example, Lyndon Harris qualified 3rd at Eton. John Barton qualified 2nd from Eton. If we look at the Eton race, John Barton was actually 4th. Lyndon Harris was actually 5th. So Callum Fraser and Robert Abram had not actually entered for the World Championships, and that shifted everything back down. So if you didn't enter, you weren't counted in the top 4, which means that to be in the top 4, you could swim at 103 seconds per 100 metres, which is 1:43 or 1:35. So this is now getting slightly more interesting to look at it like that. If we look at the St Neots race, yeah, then Edward had already qualified, but Tom Vickery and Chris Green didn't go in for it. So Ross McGregor, which had already pre-qualified, obviously qualified as well. We then come down to Nick Sisler, and there's huge amounts of gaps where people didn't actually go. In fact, the last qualifier here is Andrew Hyde, although I don't think he qualified from here. I think Andrew qualified from another race here, from the Nottingham, where he was slightly higher up the field. So I think he qualified there. But Andrew actually got into that race, as did James Luff. And James Luff was on 1:40, he was on 38, and he was on 16.2 in a race where people were doing 40 kilometres, 43 kilometres an hour. So you can see that by planning successfully and looking at the whole field, you can actually gauge the effort you will have to make and the speed you'll have to race at in order to get to the position you want. Now, Lance wants to be top 4, so there's no question of doubt he's going to have to challenge the likes of Edward Castro and Ross McGregor. And that's what we'll have to plan for, and that's what we'll show you in the next section of this video.
All right, so he's looking to qualify as a top 4 place, but that doesn't matter. If you just want to qualify as one of the top 20, you now have worked out what speed you need to train at to potentially get within that top 20 of your age group. The next important thing is to learn to train at and for those speeds specifically. Again, I'm going to go to the computer, give you some give you some examples on how you might train in each of the disciplines to hit that speed.
So here's a swim session that we might do this time of year. Remember, we're a long way off actually race season. So we're going to do a nice warm-up, skull to swims, getting the feel of the water, kicking on your sides, trying to balance yourself in the water, then some drills, then a build set before 2 or 3 main sets. And here what I've done is I've got 3 times 4 lots of 50 on 55 seconds, hitting 37 seconds. After those 4, we've got a recovery swim of 50 on 130. After that, we go straight into a set of 4 100s on 150, where we're trying to hit 115. Again, after 4, we've got a recovery swim. Then we round that off with a 200, trying to hit that pace again. So that's one effort at a slightly longer distance. We then just have speed with fins, and we sprint with the fins to give us that feeling of speed. Okay, let's go on to cycling now. In cycling, what we might do is testing the pace. That's meant to be open road, not ope road, but that's okay. Do an 8K warm-up, about 20 minutes. Then a really hard 5K, trying to find as quiet a road as possible, trying to get 40 kilometers an hour or close to that if we can, and then just ease it, gradually decreasing to a spin coming home. Very simple set, testing the pace over 5 kilometers. Okay, let's have a look at our run, what we're going to do. We actually did this set just the other day for Lance. So we're going to slowly but surely increase pace over 1.2, do some drills so that we loosen up the body nicely, and then go into our main set, which is a 400, 800 and 1.2, 1.2, 0.8 or 800 and 400. On the 400 and 800, we want 17 kilometers per hour or greater, so that you can go up to 18 kilometers per hour if that's possible. And he did do that on the shorter distances. And on the 1.2, which is going to be done twice in a row, we want exactly 17 kilometers per hour. Why we want 17 kilometers per hour? Because we actually want to know we can hit that speed as we tire. The rest for this is 1 minute in between rounds. And that is worth taking because we want to mentally know that we can hit that pace or greater when we come to a race. We don't want any negative mentality at all when we're training, because we want to take that positive mentality into a race. And that's how, just in a short space of time, we might attack hitting these paces that we know we're going to have to race at.
Okay, so now we know our races, we know our competition, we know the speed that they and we are going to have to go to get there, and we've got a training plan to hit those speeds. The 5th and perhaps most vital of all the tips: practice those speeds in race conditions or as close to race conditions as you can get. Now, these qualifying races sometimes are early in the season, so there's not a great deal of opportunity to race them, but you can do races such as park runs, etc., after you've cycled there, so you simulate coming off the bike. You can actually plan to race a race and take the run as the section you're going to do at race pace, or the swim you're going to do at race pace, or the swim and the run taking the bike slightly off that pace, because obviously you're only going to peak for the race you're going to do. If you're peaking beforehand, you're probably peaking too early and you might spoil your form for the race you actually want to do. So we need to practice individual elements as elements prior to the race. Now, if you're doing that in practice, obviously coming in off of a 20 kilometer, 40 kilometer bike ride and running at the pace you need to run for, let's say, 3 of the 5K or 6 of the 10K you need, will be enough to actually, in your mind, get you into that positive mentality that says, I've done this before, I know I can do it. Okay, so there you have it. 5 tips guaranteed to help you get to the World Championships in Mexico for 2016. Okay, well, I hope you're successful. I hope my son's successful. We'll keep you informed of that. Have good training. Enjoy yourself. Keep well. See you soon.